'Cause when Jonas born, it's always gonna do. And all green is always on the sea. It was gonna always bring to life again. So get ready, 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 ready. Get ready, 'cause here they come.
What's going on, everybody? Paul Leston Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. It's the Man Shot Show with Boy Green Digital. It's time for a full New York Jets draft preview. This show, this series, this YouTube channel is brought to you by the Sweet Lord Above. Northeast Roofing Professionals, of course, and this episode is brought to you by our friends over at Creative Florist, the Allen Floral Group. They have you covered for all your floral needs. No man-child today. He'll be with us in spirit. He actually sent in some questions. We'll get to those as well here on the show. But our weekly Jets Chat features this man, Jake Asman of ESPN New York, the Jake Asman Show. You guys see him anywhere and everywhere. Let's bring him in. Jake Asman.
What's up, Paul? How we doing? Draft week, baby. We finally made it.
Yeah, and that's definitely where I want to start, Jake, because this has been a hell of a roller coaster. I saw you did a show on it. I yelled about it randomly on Boy Green Daily. Like, how do we keep, it's sort of the Jesse Pinkman line for Breaking Bad. How do we keep letting him get away with this? Todd McShay, man, on April 15th, he dropped his 4.0 mock draft. And in the mock draft, he predicted that the Jets would take Texas Tech's David Bailey. And not only was that a thing, but inside the blurb, he said from sources that that's basically a foregone conclusion that David Bailey is going to be a Jet. And I'm like, all right, well, if that's your take, so be it. 3 days later, Jake, on April 18th, he tweeted out, hey, I'm heading to LA. But before I do, let me just throw this out there. Before I lay my head on the pillow tonight, it's going to be Arvell Reese. What the flying hoot? What's going on here, Jake? How do we keep letting these people get away with this?
Hamstrings gotta be hurting from that back pedal by McShay. And he's not alone. I mean, we've had a lot of the quote-unquote draft insiders walk back things or move the goalposts or flip-flop like McShay did. It's been embarrassing. I look at it from a positive standpoint that the Jets are a lot more buttoned up than maybe they've been in the past. There's less leaks because everyone said last week they're going Bailey, and now the betting odds have moved significantly where Reese is back to being the overwhelming favorite. I still think it's Reese. I started to lean Bailey just because it was so prevalent with everyone saying it. I'm like, I feel like an idiot if I don't say Bailey. But again, it just proves that nobody actually knows anything right now. And I think it's going to be Reese. So we've gone back and forth a lot, but it really is not a good look for all these people who claim to be in the know. And they've been wrong a lot about the New York Jets.
Especially when if Todd McShay just picked David Bailey in his latest mock draft and gave some blurb, hey, David Bailey's this, David Bailey's that, and that's it. I don't think I'd be roasting him as bad. But when you come out and say foregone conclusion, well, we have other insiders going fait accompli and get my French lesson. I took Spanish in high school, but get a little French in there. I'm like, man, it feels like they're going aggressive and over the top to say these things and then to immediately about face. But to your point, Jake, it works out for me. I wanted Arvell Reese the whole time. So, okay, if we end up getting the guy I wanted anyway, then it's worth all the hoopla of sort of pivoting from here or there and everywhere. So it sounds like you'd be happy if Arvell Reese ends up being the pick.
Look, I like David Bailey as well, but I think Reese is the better prospect. I think you take the big swing when you're picking second overall. I worry Bailey's too similar to Will McDonald. He might be better than Will McDonald, but Will McDonald's had 18.5 sacks the last 2 years, and the Jets have won 8 total games. I think there's more to this than just who's the guy that can rush the passer the best. I think you could do a lot of special things with Reese, and I think the Jets actually have the right defensive line coach to get the most out of what Reese is going to need to learn as a rusher. But I think what he does already as an outside linebacker in a 3-4 is really going to help this team in the front seven. So I would take Reese. I'm not going to be, that angry if they went Bailey like it's the worst decision ever. But I would lean Reese, and that's ultimately where I do think they're going to go.
I agree, by the way. He led the college football in sacks last year. I'm going to pull my hair out because they selected him and they were 31st in sacks last year. No, I'm not. I prefer Reese, but we'll see where it ends up going. So Manchout's not here with us. God rest his soul. He's not dead, but, he wanted to send in a question here for you, Jake. There's all the Dexter Lawrence stuff over the weekend. They traded him to the Bengals. I couldn't believe they got the 10th overall pick. I didn't think they were going to get that kind of value. But he wanted me to ask you this, Jake, that the Giants now sit at 5th overall and 10th overall. The Jets, of course, sit at 2nd overall and 16th overall, respectively, in the first round. Would you be interested in striking a trade with Lurch's Giants to move up from 16 to 10 to go get somebody? Because it sort of seems like from some of Manchild's talking, he'd prefer, in a perfect world, to drop back to that 16 range. And he likes some of those players in that range that maybe they'd be somewhat of a reach at 10. So he's open to that possibility of moving back. But he was curious if you'd be open to that possibility of moving up.
Yeah, because I think if the Giants stick and pick, I mean, they're a team that could take a receiver the Jets want. So, maybe the Jets and Giants could do some business. Going up from 16 to 10 certainly wouldn't cost as much as the Jets potentially trying to get up to number 7, like we talked about on the show last week with Washington. So I'm open to it. I do think the Dexter Lawrence deal does put more of an onus on the Jets to have to be aggressive if they want one of the quote unquote big 3 receivers, because there's a lot of teams, including the Giants now, that could take a receiver in front of them. I don't think the Bengals with their current receiver room, we're going to use the 10th overall pick on a wideout. The Giants certainly could. So, look, they could do it at 5, but if they don't, all of a sudden, let's say they take Sonny Styles now at 5, at 10, they could take Jordan Tyson there, who they've been linked to. So, I do think the Dexter Lawrence trade has some significant ramifications potentially for the Jets' pursuit of one of the big receivers.
Should the Jets have that pursuit of the big receivers? I was doing a 3-round mock draft earlier today for MC Show Digital channel, and I got a lot of yells. Shout out to Bhaskar if she's watching this interview right now. I got a lot of yells for trading up for Carnell Tate, a trade we've been seeing a lot, because I wanted to secure the wide receiver of choice. And she says, hey, this is a mediocre wide receiver class. The receivers will be better in 27. Why overcompensate and try to force a square peg into a round hole is essentially her reasoning. And there's a lot of Jet fans that want to trade up, again, for a wide receiver, myself included. Should the Jets want to trade up?
Yeah, look, I would trade up. Again, I've been pretty steadfast in this. You have these extra picks, and people are like, oh, we need starters with all of them. Yes, we also have 3 first-round picks next year, and you're a team that's devoid of talent at the wide receiver spot, and this is why you accumulate the extra picks. Like the Jets offensively, they actually are, I don't want to say they're set. They always could add more, but they have a lot going for them. They have the number 1 receiver. They have a good offensive line. They have a tight end who's ascending now in year 2. They have a running back in Breece Hall who ran for over 1,000 yards last year. You're not bereft of talent there. So, yeah, obviously, in a perfect world, you stay at 16, you draft a great receiver, and you're set. That might not be the case. If you got to be aggressive, I would be aggressive. You need another receiver. It's become a premium position. You have Garrett Wilson, but last year he was injured, and you saw what that room looked like. They've done nothing to address the room this offseason. So, look, within reason, if I could be aggressive and I could get Carnell Tate, that's the guy I would make the move for. I think his floor is a number 2 wide receiver. His ceiling is the perfect 1B to Garrett Wilson, and that's exactly what they need on this team.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great sort of assessment by you on Carnell Tate, who is my receiver of choice. Another receiver of choice, Jake, you have a lot of guests on your show, the Jake Asman Show. All kinds of guests. You're on, twice a day, all the time, all week long, ESPN New York and everything else. Some people could say, Jake, that you do more Jets content than anyone else on the planet. Someone could say that. Someone could. Make that.
Well, I get a lot of hate for some of the craziness that that comes on the show. So I'm like, look, I'm on air for 4 hours a day, and typically, if you watch the first 45 minutes to an hour of each show, you're getting straight Jets talk. So the people that complain, go find a different platform that's giving you more Jets talk. I challenge that person to find it.
Well, one of the people you've had on the show, and you have him on regularly, and so do I, beat reporter Nick Faria. He is not afraid to say things, and he is a massive Jordan Tyson guy, and he called it a perfect fit. I saw that on the Jake Asman Show social media, which, by the way, has been picking up steam. It is looked better than perhaps I've ever seen it. I don't know what the I can't quite put my finger on the pulse of that, but it's certainly picked up. It's looked spectacular, Jake, and he said it'd be a perfect fit, pairing Jordan Tyson with the Jets. Jordan Tyson's a bag of injuries. He did have that Friday workout where a lot of teams were there, and he looked pretty good running around in a pair of shorts. Are you willing to risk it to get the biscuit with Jordan Tyson? Because a lot of people say if he was fully healthy, he'd be the clear wide receiver 1 of this class. Of course, he's not that bill of health, so he's not considered in that way. Are you willing to risk it for Jordan Tyson?
I wouldn't trade up for him because of the injury risk. I'd be concerned. That said, I can't sit here and say I'd be devastated if they did it, because for everything we just talked about, they desperately need wide receiver help. I just would prefer it to be for Carnell Tate, because I think he just has a higher floor. And if I'm trading up, I need to make sure that I'm protecting myself if I'm going to trade additional assets. I like the fit a lot, though. I mean, you see a lot of Garrett Wilson when you watch Jordan Tyson, the way they move, similar playing style. I think they both could play in the slot. They both could play on the outside. So there's a lot to like with the player. I just get concerned when you have a guy who's dealt with injuries. Every year he's basically been in college football, and now you're going to draft him and have him play in the Northeast at MetLife Stadium on that turf. That concerns me. But again, I don't think he makes it to 16. So if that's their guy, you're going to have to trade up, and you better be right if you make that swing.
Now, ESPN's Rich Cimini has joined you on the Jake Asman show, and during some of those conversations, he's also the co-host of the Jets Collective podcast. Jake Asman, Rich Cimini, Brandon Tierney, a trio, the triplet, some are calling it, out there in the universe. And you guys have talked about how Rich Cimini told you that Frank Reich is going to have a lot of say on who is the quarterback, and Geno Smith ends up being the guy. I'm curious, how much say do you think Frank Reich is going to have, like on the receivers, for instance? Because one guy I know you like, Jake, I've just heard you say it a lot, is Mekhi Lemon. Now, Mekhi Lemon, one of the criticisms is his height. He's 5'11". If you look at the history of Frank Reich when he's been in control running offenses, a lot of those receivers are bigger. So I'm not sure if he's just like, he's the guy at the carnival and says, Mekhi Lemon, stand over here. I don't know. You don't quite fit the height qualifications. So how much say do you believe Frank Reich has to that level of like wide receiver? And if one guy's shorter and the other guy's taller, he's like, yeah, and it's close. He's just like, yeah, I'll take the taller guy.
I do think Frank Reich will have a major say in the offensive players, especially the quarterbacks, because it goes without saying. Look, he's going to have a say on receivers, though. There's no doubt. I don't know if his voice carries more weight than Glenn at wide receiver or Darren Muji, for example. But look, you hired Frank Reich. He's a former NFL head coach for 2 different franchises. He played the quarterback position. He's been successful as a play caller in the past. His voice is definitely going to carry a lot of weight. Like if he's dead set against Mekhi Lemon because he's 5'11", and that's the deal breaker, then maybe they would go with someone else over Lemon if that situation played out. But I think Frank Reich has an important voice, but I don't think it's like the final voice on any offensive player.
Would you be disappointed, Jake, if the Jets, for this wide receiver conversation, they just wait till 33 and say, hey, somebody's going to be there?
I would be, because you're allowing all these teams to basically take the quote unquote best guys. And what's stopping other teams from trading back in to the first round at that point, knowing the Jets need a receiver and they're sitting there at 33. Oh, we better get so-and-so before the Jets inevitably take them at 33. It just, again, if that's their strategy, you better be right, because not only are you neglecting it in free agency, then you neglected it night one of the draft, and now you're asking a second-round pick. I don't care if it's 33 and it's an extension of round one. You're still asking a second-round pick to come in and have to be an immediate contributor to give yourself a semblance of a passing offense. That's tough, especially when, the Jet history at wide receiver in the second round, the last 15 years is a joke. Devin Smith, Stephen Hill, Elijah Moore. You keep going down the line, right? Yeah. Denzel Mims, and then you want to throw in the third round. Oh, here's Malachi Corley coming in. Like it's been bad.
Stewart.
God, Arian Smith in round 4 this past year. It's just day 2, day 3. They've been abysmal at it. They've had a high hit rate in round 1 though. Garrett Wilson, Santana Moss, the last 2 times they've done the first round receiver. So that's why I really would want this team to come away night 1 with a legitimate wide receiver.
All right, let's get one more in here before we take a timeout, and I want to keep it at pass catcher. Has your temperature changed at all on Kenyon Sadiq, the Oregon tight end? Because, Rich Cimini on the Jets Collective dropped a very juicy nugget very early on for you guys about, hey, I've heard some Kenyon Sadiq Jet stuff, and it was met with interesting responses from you and Brandon Tierney, the other host on the show, and fans on social media sort of debating it themselves. And then as we've sort of grown from there, Brandon BT has certainly seemingly gotten more attached and said, oh, okay, this is actually pretty intriguing. And we've talked about it compared to the wide receiver. How interested are you in some Kenyon Sadiq action? Because the last first round tight end we had was Dustin Keller in 2008. So, it's been a hot second.
Yeah, look, I like Kenyon Sadiq. I don't think I like him at 16 though. I don't trust the Jets offensive coaching to be able to design an offense that's innovative enough to mix in 2 tight ends. I don't. Maybe that's unfair, but I'd rather another team take the chance on Sadiq. I want a more conventional pass catcher that plays wide receiver than to go with Sadiq at 16.
And by the way, I think I agree with you. I think if you draft Kenyon Sadiq, I don't think it's just easy peasy lemon squeezy. I'm not an offensive coordinator, so I won't pretend to be. But if you get a wide receiver, it seems easier to find ways to get him on the field. Tight end, the two tight end sets, you are going to have a planned attack to max, and it could work. I think it could be dynamic to have Mason Taylor and Kenyon Sadiq feeding over each other. Tight end can be a quarterback's best friend, but I think there will need some, some attention to detail, some TLC, some planning. And we haven't seen some of that from Frank Reich and some of his top 10 offenses with the Indianapolis Colts. Again, we're speaking with Jake Asman, baby. He's the host of the Jake Asman Show. You see him on ESPN New York. Also, the Jets Collective podcast. We'll do some promotions for that. And Jake's heading to the friggin' draft, baby. The Jake Asman Show's on the road. McFadden's. We'll be promoting some of that here on the show. But first, let's take a quick time out and give a shout out to our friends over at Creative Florist, the Allen Floral Group, for all your floral needs. We'll be right back after this. CreativeFlorisOnline.com is a place to go. That is on Oswego Road over there in Liverpool, locally. For those tuning in, hey, everybody, I'm Paul Liston Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. We're doing our full Jets draft preview with Jake Asman here on the show. No man-child, but he's with us in spirit. He's probably celebrating that friggin' Dexter Lawrence trade, for God's sakes. That's probably what he's doing over there somewhere in there. Jake, I guess let's do that since we're just talking about it before the break. You're going to McFadden's. What's the layout? You have any special guests, some giveaways? What's all the things that are cooking for Jake Asman in Pittsburgh? And sort of what is your call to arms? If you grabbed the old conch and Anchorman, Jet fans, hear thy message. And your message is what?
Well, Boy Green's going to be there. He's going to be stopping by. Look, if you're a Jet fan and you want a hub for draft day, draft weekend, McFadden's has every TV, every bar special you could imagine. Great food. It's just great vibes, man. I'm going to be doing a live show from there during the day leading up to the draft. So we'll have special guests like Paul and a bunch of other Jet content creators are making the trip. Stop by. It's going to be fun, man. Good vibes. Hang out with fellow Jet fans. It's located not far from where all the action is if you're going to the actual draft. So if you're looking for a place to hang out, I mean, the party starts at noon. It's open literally all night. So you can go to the draft. You can come back after. I'm going to be going to the draft and coming back to do my round one reaction show, see whatever the Jets end up doing. So, again, for anyone making the trip who needs a place to be surrounded by Jet fans, McFadden's in Pittsburgh will be the place.
And also, Jake, I hear you're having some giveaways and whatnot as well there at McFadden's.
That's right. We're going to be giving away a bunch of signed Jet-related items. So anyone who's interested and wants in on the raffle, just RSVP with the link I have been sharing across my social media. Just go to my most recent YouTube video. You'll see it's a link to a party full link. You just click yes, you put in your name, your email, so we'll add you to the raffle list, and you'll see all the information about the different specials and things going on. And McFadden's is on there too.
All right, let's talk about another one of your ventures, Jake. I want to work this in before we get back to Jets draft stuff. Jets Collective. How has this sort of evolved for you? It's ESPN's Rich Cimini, who's covered the team for just under 4 decades. Brandon Tierney, BT Unleashed on YouTube. He's a longtime radio personality. And it seems like you guys are getting chummy with one another. It's getting even more friendly. You guys are giving each other jokes and doing all kinds of things. So it seems like it's becoming a real fun vibe, even just a handful of episodes in.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And, you're a big part of it too, Paul, with all the stuff you're doing behind the scenes, social media wise, some of the clips you've been posting that have helped, bring an extra eyeballs on the show, especially if it's something, Rich is reporting on that always, it gets a lot of people intrigued. So it's been fun. I mean, Rich is a pro, BT is a professional radio guy, passionate Jet fan like me. So, as we get to know each other more and more, I think there'll be some more lighthearted moments along the way. And I think it's going to be a really fun episode tomorrow night because Darren Muji's supposed to speak and probably won't say a whole lot as these GMs typically try to keep everything close to the vest this time of year. But we'll have some reaction to that tomorrow night at 8 Eastern when we go live. So we have our final show before the draft, and then we'll have a show, reacting to everything the Jets did in the draft the following week. So I'm pumped. I can't wait.
All right, let me throw a scenario at you, Jake. You tell me what is more likely. I'm a big fan of the Rich Eisen show. You've had Rich Eisen on your show, several shows for that matter. And I'm curious. So I'll steal a segment from the Rich Eisen show. What's more likely? the Jets take a quarterback within the first 2 rounds, or they don't take a quarterback at all during the 2026 NFL draft? What's more likely?
Ooh, great question. Great question. I would say it is more likely they take a quarterback in the first 2 rounds than they
Oh.
bypass the position altogether. Because I just don't see this regime that doesn't have a long-term answer on its roster at that position skipping on quarterback altogether twice. Like, again, I'm not expecting them to find their long-term answer in the draft. But I think you have to take dart throws until you have your guy. So no one's saying you need to take Ty Simpson at 16 or 33. But don't you got to take a Carson Beck or Drew Aller in the 4th round if they're there? Or Cole Payton, who it came out over the weekend, the Jets had done some work with, or Garrett Nussmeier, whoever. Like, I just feel like the odds of them going 2 straight draft classes, not taking any swing on quarterback, that would be really surprising to me. So I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback in the 1st or 2nd round, but I think it's more likely that happens and they bypass the position altogether.
Would you criticize them if they punted on the quarterback position for a 2nd straight year in terms of drafting a guy?
I think they're setting themselves up for some criticism because then late in the year, are we watching Brady cook again? I mean, at that point, maybe some fans are rooting for it but it's like, wouldn't you want to have something in the pipeline to have some hope or get some experience with a guy, or maybe you could develop into your long-term backup? So I guess it would depend how the board broke, but I think there'd be a lot of Jet fans questioning the strategy. You have 2 7th-round picks. You couldn't take a chance on anyone at that point. Like, I'm not sure.
I'll set up a 2-parter here, but I'll ask you the first one separately. Is Jamin Sherwood on this roster in September?
Ooh, good question. I'm going to say yes, he is. I still think he is. Although, if he's not on the roster, we're going to know by the end of this upcoming weekend because he feels like traded for a day 3 pick type of thing. If it's going to happen, it would happen this weekend.
I think that's well said, and that's where I thought you would answer. So it sets me up for this. With Jamin Sherwood likely be on the roster, he's getting paid $45 million. I imagine he's going to be part of the starting linebacker core of Demario Davis then. So that leads us to what need is really more need. A little bit what's more likely in a way is that Jet fans have said that linebacker is a need. And I'm talking about not edge rusher. I'm talking about in our schematics, a inside linebacker like Demario Davis and Jamin Sherwood and the like. And for some people, Rich even said it on the Jets Collective podcast, Rich Cimini, about corner being a bigger need than people think. I think there's a world where they can rock with the linebacker group they have, and they could rock with the cornerback group they have. But I don't think both are going to be as is when we get to draft day. I think a significant addition is going to happen. Which is more likely to get that significant addition? I've heard the whispers at 16. Does Jermod McCoy fall into the Jets' hands potentially and you go corner? Or Chris Johnson, who Rich is in love with, has a Darren Muji San Diego State connection. Is that the play? Or linebacker, we've all been drilling over Sonny Styles, but it's unclear if that's going to work out where the Jets' picks are. So what's the more likely position that gets addressed? And in your mind, and maybe this will be the same answer, what is the bigger position of need, inside linebacker or corner?
I think you could argue that inside linebacker is a bigger position in need because I don't think Sherwood has a real future here. Malagoa is a day 3 pick a year ago. You can't really rely on him. Demario Davis is 37, turning 38, still able to play at a high level, but I mean, age is age. It's just a fact. So I would argue inside linebacker. Corner is a sneaky need, though. I don't think it's a need where I would use the 16th overall pick on a corner like I've seen some mock the Jets to select there. I don't think that makes sense. But if you look at Brandon Stevens' contract, the money's no longer guaranteed after this year. You know, Azareye'h Thomas, we think could be a starter. We don't know. He was a 3rd-round pick last year who got hurt. Then you look at the other names. I mean, Brownlee, day 3 guy, you know, we'll see what he is at nickel. They signed Deshaun Wright over from the Bears, but it's a 1-year deal. So, you know, I don't think it's a gigantic need, like they need to use a premium pick on it. But, I mean, Rich Cimini's been steadfast in saying he thinks the Jets are going to take a corner at some point. I tend to agree. Could be as early as 33 or 44.
Let's go to safety real quick. Another position, which again, I think you could, like, if you told me and you transported me into the future, hey, Dane Belton, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Malachi Moore, like this group, and Andre Sisco who came back, that's your starting safety group. Like, all right, that makes sense. That's the group that enters the season. But I could also see if the Jets made a splash and with Dylan Thieneman or someone, whoever that safety is, somewhere within maybe the first 2 rounds or even somewhere else where you add that in. Where do you sort of value that safety position in terms of the needs for the Jets? Do you think they could just rock with the group they have and they don't need another body? Or is it bigger than it seems on the surface in terms of that roster need?
They definitely could use another safety. I just question whether or not they're going to use pick 16 on a safety. I think 33 and 44, if you told me there's a safety they like, Emmanuel McNeil Warren falls out of the first round, maybe they like AJ Housey, who I know Connor Rogers has mocked a lot to the Jets, and he thinks he'd be a good fit for Aaron Glenn. That's a name to watch. It's a good safety class. So if you're the Jets, and you want to invest in that position, again, for the same reasons we talked about corner, you don't really have anything long-term there. I mean, Minka was an addition, but he's a guy that could kind of play all over the place. They can line him up at nickel. I don't think signing Dane Belton, or I don't think drafting, what's his name? Moore. Yeah, Matt Moore from Bama last year on day 3 is enough to say you're set at that position, or bringing back, your guy, Andre Sisco, on a 1-year deal. So safety's definitely in play 100%. I think the second round is true, assuming they hit receiver early at 16 or they trade up. Second round BPA in the secondary at either corner or safety, I definitely think is a real position in play.
All right, let's keep playing this. What's more likely? This is fun. I could get why Rich Eisen does it on the show every week, for God's sakes. 33. Is it more likely they stick and pick or they trade that pick?
Ooh. I'm going to say they traded. It's been traded 2 of the last 3 drafts. Jets need assets. I think they're going to trade up. So if they trade up, I think, the Mood strategy should be move out of 33, recoup some of what you just gave up. I think Jet fans would be like, wow, this is brilliant.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I keep going back and forth because I did an assessment. I did it for a show like maybe a week ago or something. Since 32 teams became a thing, which was the Houston Texans in the 2002 came in as part of that expansion, I looked at how many times that 33rd overall pick has been traded, and it's been traded 7 times in history. So since 32 teams. So, and you mentioned it, 3 of the last 4 years too. So there's a frequency and a recency that is included there. So I am curious if they use 33. Either way, we've seen it used in both forms, utilizing 33 to jump back into the first round or utilizing 33 to trade back. All right, another what's more likely. You say they're going to trade it. All right, Jake, let's take it another level. Let's take this, let's put a ring on this, okay? Is it more likely that the Jets use the 33rd pick to trade back into the first round to get a third first rounder, or they use it to trade back on day 2 to just recoup for what you said, lost assets previously?
I say it's more likely they trade out of 33 to get extra picks than it is they use 33 to come back in to the first round. But we should not discount that as a possibility. Say they really want a receiver, and we all just assume they'll use 16 to go up and get someone. Well, what if they use 16 to address a different position, knowing that, look, they might like Denzel Boston or Omar Cooper Jr., and they don't think they're worth the 16th pick. But, Vega Owane, maybe he is, and then all of a sudden you take 33 and you come back in to get your receiver that way. I think it's less likely, but we can't rule that out as a possible strategy as well.
Would you be opposed to this? I heard Benjamin Solak write this for the mothership, ESPN, that the Jets, and this is his quote, the Jets would be justified if they triple dipped at wide receiver. We talked about a single dip. We talked about a double dip, a triple dip of the chip at wide receiver. He said it would be justified based on what's going on in that wide receiver room. Do you agree?
3 receivers, that would be
33% of your picks in the 2026 NFL draft.
Yeah, I mean,
receiver.
I get the point. He's not wrong. The Jets wide receiver room, as we know, is not good. 3 feels like a lot. Maybe if it's Sadiq and 2 receivers, then it's like pass catchers. You could kind of argue it because Kenyon Sadiq is basically a big slot if you're taking him at 16. But that would surprise me personally.
All right, I'll throw this out there, and hey, you feel free to use this if you guys have time in the Jets Collective podcast as a question. Rich has mentioned a lot that he could see the Jets double dipping at wide receiver. It doesn't have to be within the first 44. It could be at any point during the draft. They have 9 picks. He said he could see them double dipping. Yet Rich has also said that he believes the team is very high on Adonai Mitchell. Can those 2 things coexist? Can you draft 2 but also be high on Adonai Mitchell? And if so, how does that work then?
You can, if you want to just have pure competition at the position. You are right, though. If they truly like Adonai Mitchell and they think he's better than what the perception is, well, the perception is right now that he's not a number 2 and he's probably not a number 3. If they think he's a number 3, well, you're drafting a receiver early. Maybe that you'd find your number 2 and then your number 4, and that player would take the spot of Arian Smith potentially. So that's how it could potentially work. If you think Mitchell is actually your 3, you draft the 2, and then you're drafting a 4 with Isaiah Williams, and then like Arian Smith's the odd guy out.
Yeah, I guess that ends up being the case for how it's all put together. And then for Lou B, come on, he does it for both of us here. What the hell is going to happen here at Brees Hall? Is Muji, I want to call Muji a man of his word, but it's part of his job to lie, right? He signed Sauce and Garrett, and a couple months later he traded him. He says he wants to keep Breece Hall, and that makes sense that he'd want to keep Breece Hall because Breece Hall is really talented. But what says he actually follows through and then ends up signing him shortly after the draft? So what do you anticipate happened to Breece? Does anything get funky there in Pittsburgh?
I still think ultimately Breece Hall is signed before the start of training camp. Yeah, they gave him the tag, all signs. We haven't heard anything different that the Jets and Breece Hall aren't on good terms or anything. I know he didn't show up today, but that's what happens when you give a guy the tag. It's it's just like part of business. So wouldn't look too much into that. Again, I know there's some Jet fans who really want Jeremiah Love and you trade Breece. I don't see that happening. That would shock me. Like that would be one of the most surprising things ever if they took Jeremiah Love. I think Breece is their running back. I think they get a deal done before training camp. Might not be right after the draft, but everything they've said on the record about Breece and some of the rumblings from people covering the team behind the scenes is that they're in a good place and they think they'll get something done.
All right, let's end there. So I will ask you, you'll have to put Jeremiah Love off your bucket list now that you've revealed it. What's the most shocking things that the New York Jets could do this weekend that's somewhat feasible, right? They're not going to take a punter second overall. So that'd
Simpson
be
at 16. I think it's time.
Okay.
Right? Like
okay.
the giant smoke screen, they're not interested. Actually, they are. Boom, they draft them 16th overall. That would be shocking.
How much what benefit of the doubt would you give to the Jets if they did that? Because, this is me as a Jets fan. When the Jets do something, even if it's a player I don't like, and they draft him, I'm like, you know what? I'm a fan. I'm going to get with it. I may have this criticism or this concern, but damn it, I'm all in. Let's go. He's our guy now. He's wearing green and white. He's our guy. Let's ride. How much, if they did the Ty Simpson thing at 16, how much benefit of the doubt would you give the Jets? Like, oh man, they must, obviously if you're taking him there, you think he's a franchise quarterback and he's going to do everything and anything that you think in the world. How much credence would you give to the Jets if they pulled that trigger and you'd say, you know what, they must have a greater plan here?
Oof. I mean, if they took Simpson at 16, that'd be tough to swallow. It really would. What's the plan? When does he play? When does he get in action? How many games does he actually get in there? And how does he look? What does that mean for the future of the position when you have 3 firsts and 27? What if Glenn doesn't work out? Then you drafted a quarterback for a coaching staff that's not here anymore. What does that mean for Muji? Is he gone? Like it'd be a major shift in how we view the future of the Jets and what the timeline is for them to turn things around.
All right, Jake, any more plugs that we missed here during the show, baby? It's draft week. We've been waiting forever for this thing. Jet fans are a special kind of animal, and we've all been waiting. Hear it. Come on, any other plugs, Jake? You got to be cooking something, for goodness sake, with everything going on draft week.
Just getting the last couple shows in, man. Just a lot of content. Excited to head out to Pittsburgh. Got a flight early in the morning on Wednesday. I'm dropping an interview on my channel with Evan Roberts of WFAN, who's a big Jets fan. So the Jet fans can definitely check that out because I'm not going to be able to go live at my normal time Wednesday morning because I'll be flying. So that will be coming on the channel. And yeah, McFadden's in Pittsburgh. Can't wait to see you in person, Boy Green.
All right, Jake, let's just hope that the Jets do something right this weekend. That's it, baby. So it should be a lot of fun. Jake, thank you so much for joining us. And when we see each other, we'll figure out what the hell is going to go on with the Jets draft. But when you're next on this channel, I'm sure Manshaw will be here. We'll be recapping whatever the hell the Jets just did. It should be interesting, man.
Can't wait.